Bonnie Critley, great to see you.
How's it going today?
Going very well. Going very well. Glad to have you with us. Now, in challenging the gentleman, we just saw there in the clip, Mr. Pierre Poilievre, you were, by and large part, the candidate to watch. You generated your own headlines, and that translated into you capturing almost 10% of the vote. How does that outcome mesh with the motivation that drew you to run in the first place?
Well, I showed up, I stood up because I wanted to explain to the Conservative Party that we were not tools to be stepped on and discarded in one man's ego-driven trip to be NPM.
By that, do you mean the residents of your riding?
I mean my neighbors in our communities, yep. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little disappointed. I did expect a higher percentage of the vote. My polling showed me running a little bit higher. But then the disinformation campaign came in, and then there were shenanigans during Election Day, so I'm not 100% surprised on how everything turned out. He is now my MP, so he's going to get all sorts of letters from me if he doesn't show up. Because I spoke with Laura Babcock on the O Show yesterday, and what I said was that I challenge Monsieur Poilievre to actually come back to Battle River-crowfoot and prove me wrong, because I don't think we'll ever see him again. I am going to leave whether it was legal or illegal up to the Commissioner for Canadian Elections and the RCMP, but there were mocked up Elections Canada signs that had the appropriate disclaimer in font about that big on a 3-by-6 foot sign in a slightly different shade of yellow than there was. And then there was issues where DROs, deputy returning officers, were handing out the large print books only with all the parties up front and all the independents in the back. Plus, there were some other issues reported by my scrutineers that have been reported to the Commissioner, yes. They may have cost me the election, because as I'm going door to door to door to door, I'm having to say, I am not part of the longest ballot. This is not who I'm with. I am here because I'm your neighbor, and this isn't right. And I had a few doors slammed in my face before I could get that out. And then, of course, the rest of the parties, especially with the books, the way things were done, with the change in the ballots and everything, I was the only one who really had a problem.
Did you have the opportunity for a one-on-one conversation with Pierre Poilievre?
He avoided me. Anytime we were at an event together, I've got people saying, he's all over the place, he's over there. And if I went looking, he's gone. He avoided me. We had a super brief conversation backstage at the forum in Camrose. He decided the rules didn't apply to him, so he didn't show up with the rest of the candidates in the green room. He felt the need to make a spectacle through the front door. So he showed up in the back, just in time to shake everybody's hand, and then we had to form up to go out on stage. He showed up very, very briefly backstage during the intermission, shook hands again, and disappeared again. So he did his utmost to avoid talking to me. As for his leadership review, well, he's got the lowest numbers of a Conservative leader in recent history, so we may be doing this again in May.
Okay, well, on that point, maybe
Sorry,
that's...
not May, March.
Oh man, you cannot make this mainstream media stuff and Bonnie Critley herself up. I mean, wow. When you're watching that, I literally laughed through most of that video when I saw it the first time, and even now when I see it again. Let's talk about the Battle River-crowfoot by-election. What we just witnessed was a complete dismantling of Bonnie Critley and her merry band of Liberal and NDP sympathizers, including the mainstream media, who thought they were going to pull another one over Pierre and get him out. And instead, Pierre Poilievre didn't just win, he won, of course, in a landslide, as we know. And this wasn't even close. This wasn't even contested, really. This was Alberta sending the loudest possible message to Ottawa that we want a fighter and we want Pierre. And yet, what happens the very next day? Bonnie Critley, yeah, she gets on CTV News. The person who campaigned as an independent, but was about as independent from Liberal politics as a goose is independent from Canadian skies. And she goes on CTV Edmonton, as you just saw, and cries foul. She's claiming election rigging, miscolored signs, doctored staff books, manipulated materials. But here's the kicker. Not one shred of evidence was shown in that interview, was it? Not one, not a picture, not one photograph at all, not one sworn affidavit, not even a blurry cell phone video showing what she's claiming. Nothing. Just pure conspiracy theater. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things. I'm Chris Baker. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course share this video far and wide, because we know mainstream media is not going to do it. And CTV, of course, ate all of what Bonnie said in that interview up. They gave her the platform to spout nonsense as if she were the real victim here. Let's get real. Even if there had been one-off yellow signs or a misplaced campaign flyer, Bonnie, you lost by a landslide. Off-yellow signs don't cost you tens of thousands of votes, and neither did the longest ballot. This was a massacre, not a nail-biter. Crying foul here is like blaming the weather for losing a hockey game 15-1. But here's the bigger story. Pierre may have won this round, but his battle with the liberal media is clearly not over based on that exact interview. It's only just begun, because make no mistake, the media machine is going to keep doing things like this in this country, and it's still fully geared against him. Every success will be downplayed. Every minor misstep will be exaggerated. Every opponent will be handed microphones and sob stories to muddy the waters. They even let Bonnie Critley say he had the worst conservative leader results. So the question is, what can Pierre do to defy, disarm, and completely outmaneuver the media, who want nothing more than to dethrone him as quickly as possible? Well, let me give you 10 suggestions that I think could turn this media war on its head for Pierre, and let's get right into it. So the first one that I think is going to help him out a lot is to own the digital battlefield. People like us, mainstream media is not going to help them. Their audience is shrinking anyway, but their influence remains a little bit because they're loud with seniors. Pierre needs to double down on the digital world where the gatekeepers don't exist. Things like TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Reels, podcasts, and even X will allow him to speak directly to Canadians without filters, edits, or spin. His viral clips on carbon taxes and grocery bills already show how effective this can truly be. He already built the biggest conservative base in history. Why spend energy fighting for airtime on CTV when a 60-second video viewed 5 million times does more damage to the liberal narrative than any televised debate ever could? So Pierre needs to double down on it, and he was already good at this in the last election, but he has to keep building this army of viewers who see the message firsthand, not through a liberal lens. But I understand that you've got to get to the liberals too, so his own media infrastructure has to change. Why rely on hostile platforms when you can create your own? Pierre should invest in independent podcasts from conservatives, online newsrooms from conservatives, and even docu-style YouTube series that highlight Canadian struggles under current liberal rule, but not make angry noises at them. Actually interview small business owners, farmers, or students about their real challenges with affordability. That bypasses all the media spin and creates content people trust because it comes straight from the source. And instead of yelling and screaming, they get to the point. And Pierre can build people-funded media that lives online forever and can't be edited down by CTV or CBC to 10-second hit jobs. Also, force transparency in coverage. One of the biggest weapons against media spin is shining a spotlight on the media spin. Every time journalists try to cover Bonnie Critley's baseless claims but ignore Carney's broken promises or Trudeau's past scandals, Pierre should be hammering that hypocrisy every time it comes up. Demand receipts, demand to see things, demand equal coverage. Put the journalists themselves on the defensive by asking why Canadians' real concerns get buried while liberal excuses dominate the front page. I know that the Apple video sort of did this back in the day, but there needs to be a little bit more of it. If the bias is exposed over and over and over again, Canadians start to see the pattern, and the media's credibility erodes even further. Another thing he can do here is amplify grassroots voices, because he did a really good job of this in his victory speech, talking about Battle River-crowfoot people and how he enjoyed it. He doesn't need polished talking heads to win arguments. He needs Canadians themselves, farmers talking about grain prices, single moms explaining their grocery bills, truckers warning about fuel costs. These voices cut through the spin that the mainstream media tries to put on you like nothing else, really. And if Pierre uses his platforms to amplify these stories, the media has no choice but to look elitist and out of touch when they try to discredit them. Canadians trust people who live their reality, not pundits paid six figures in Toronto studios. Demanding accountability for misinformation is another thing that not just Pierre, but the entire Conservative Party needs to do. When the media gets it wrong, and they do quite often, it needs to be not, you can't let it slide, let's say. Every false headline, every doctored narrative, every misrepresentation should be followed up with receipts and hard pushback. He can hold press conferences specifically to correct some lies, which he's done before, but demand on-air retractions or even consider legal action where necessary if it's really wrong. The Liberals and their media allies thrive on the public's short memory, but if Pierre builds a reputation for never letting a lie stand unanswered, people will start to question the story before it even lands on mainstream media. And that's a big key. We look at the Air Canada flight attendant strike as a big example of this. Media outlets love to play the role of almighty fact checker, but half the time, the fact check is nothing but a partisan opinion dressed up in authority. Pierre can turn this on its head. He can imagine a conservative fact check team. That's where he should have a team putting together this that releases daily breakdowns of media spin with data, documents, and context. Donald Trump did a little bit of this, and I'm not saying be like Donald Trump entirely, but when CTV publishes a bogus story, Pierre's team needs to come in there, do a side-by-side showing on how misleading it is. That makes Canadians wonder, if the media has to be fact-checked this often, why should we trust them at all? And then he needs to leverage allies abroad. Canadian media operates in a bubble, but outside that bubble, perspectives are very different. U.S. outlets like Fox News or even international press in Europe often see things in Canada more clearly because they're not part of the Ottawa cocktail circuit. Pierre should amplify these voices to show Canadians how skewed domestic coverage really is. On top of that, it would show how much we are actually not respected around the world right now. If CNN covers a story neutrally, but CTV turns it into a liberal puff piece, Canadians will then notice that. International comparisons break the illusion that all media agrees with the liberal narrative, because they don't. It's just what we're stuck in that bubble here in Canada. You can turn media bias into a rally cry as well. Instead of running from bias, Pierre should use it as proof of strength. Every slanted headline, every unfair hit piece should be reframed as evidence that they're afraid, because they are. Voters love underdogs who fight against stacked odds, and Pierre can frame himself as exactly that. If people see him constantly being attacked by the establishment, they'll conclude that he's the real threat to the elites. The harder the media pushes, the stronger his grassroots support grows. And then he needs to refuse the trap questions, and he's pretty good at this already, I know, but he needs to do this all the time. The media loves to try and get gotcha questions. They're designed to box politicians in or create viral gaffes, but Pierre should refuse the premise outright. Don't play the game. If a reporter asks, "Do you admit your policy will harm the poor?" the answer should be no. I reject your framing of that, just like he's done before. He needs to keep with that messaging. I know it seemed harsh and may have helped to lose the election. It didn't. Turn every trap into an opportunity to expose the bias of the question itself. This tactic frustrates journalists, as we've seen before, but delights voters who see someone finally refusing to bow to the old rules. And lastly, he needs to build a permanent war room for himself. Campaign war rooms are common, but Pierre needs one full-time, even not in an election campaign. A team dedicated to monitoring media coverage, social media narratives, and opposition spin, responding within hours, not days. When the Liberals release a fake scandal at 9 a.m., Pierre's war room should have a rebuttal trending by noon. Never let a lie stand overnight. Rapid response isn't just about defense, it's about offense and creating constant pressure so that the Liberals and their media allies are always reacting instead of leading. And that is the biggest thing that I think was amiss during the campaign. Things were allowed to bleed for too long. Pierre's victory in Battle River-crowfoot is a statement. Canadians are ready for real leadership again. Many mistakes are being made by these Liberals again, but the Liberal media aren't going to hand him that leadership for free. They will smear, they will distract, they will prop up every Bonnie Critley that comes around next. They can find and hand them a megaphone and will. So yes, Pierre won big, but the fight has only just begun for him. And if he takes these 10 steps, I think owning the digital battlefield, building his own media network, exposing bias relentlessly, amplifying real Canadians and their voices, holding liars accountable, and fact-checking the fact-checkers, leveraging those allies abroad as well, that's a big one, and rallying against media bias while dodging gotcha traps and running a permanent war room, no amount of off yellow signs or liberal tears will stop him, because here's the truth. Canadians don't trust the media anymore. They trust results. And Pierre has just shown that when it comes to results, he's unstoppable. We'll see you tomorrow.